Happy early Halloween, guys! I guess. So this time I'm here with a scene breakdown of my most recent animation slash artwork. I wanted to let you know what went into creating this, and hopefully you can learn some interesting things out of this. Maybe not, but I certainly do hope so. I'm trying to keep this as concise, clean, and cohesive as possible, so bear with me if it might seem like it isn't the case. I just hope to do the right thing here. So yeah, let's dive right in. This is what it looks like at the end. So let's just get rid of all the unnecessary things. And by the way, if you are interested, this entire scene project file is available on patreon.com/carlyfets. Same goes for the complete process of me creating this, which is, I think, more than around 7 hours, maybe even longer, I'm not sure, with commentary. So yeah, project file and complete process tutorial available on patreon.com/carlyfets. I appreciate each and every one of you supporting me, whether it's on YouTube or it's on Patreon. Truly, thank you. Once a month, I try to upload a big project like this, so there's a lot of other goodies there as well. So yeah, go check that out as we wait for the materials to export. So that's what we start out with. As you can see right here, that's not my final lighting setup. That's just a different HDRI to make it a bit more brighter and easier on the render. That's a scan of a building that is super nice, super clean. Reality just gives you the best look, but it depends on the use case. So I know in my case, I can't go for close-ups, and neither do the other things work, like those potted plants and stuff. So I made sure to just drill some holes and just remove parts of the building that I don't need. You can see the door is gone, looks pretty sloppy all around, but 3D artwork or 3D animation, at least on an individual, not professional level, is like that Homer Simpson clip where he's like all slimmed up in front of Marge, with all the fat clamped on his back as soon as the camera rotates around. So that's 3D. I fixed those holes in the wall by just creating something like this. I didn't even bother to box project the textures. Could have done that. Maybe we'll do it if I ever revisit this, but I don't think I will. This works just nicely. It's roughly the same color tones, and well, what I did to just hide that is just add some plants to the scene. And that basically gives you something that looks like this. We got all these super nice plants. Those are Megascans 3D assets from the Bridge plugin. It's just these plants, just gathered all around, hand placed, rotated them at the stairs and on top of the building, just to get this little detail going, like all over the place. These are super light. These are very low poly models with all the detail coming from the opacity map. And let's get right in here and enable our new ground. So that should actually update right here. I've been having some problems, so I've been recording this for the third time right now, so hopefully bear with me. Octane is being pretty funky, even though I've worked on the entire scene without barely any crashes. Just kind of unresponsiveness due to the darkness of the scene in general. So let's just hope that this all goes according to plan. I mean, this works for now. So that is my ground. That is also a Megascans asset, which works super nicely. So let me pause this and let's get into our pumpkins. Each of these pumpkins have an Octane light source inside of them, and some candles with animated candle flickers. I also have some candles hand placed on the stairs. I created those animated candle lights by just getting stock footage of candles and just cropping out one of the candle lights and exporting that as an image sequence along like 450 frames, and it's super small. It's 1000 by 1000 pixels because, you know, it's not that big in scene, but would technically still be kind of okay for close-ups. A black and white texture that is plugged into a gradient map to turn that white into orange, and that is plugged into the emission map. Just the base white map is plugged into the opacity. And that's basically my pumpkin setup. So the candle lights aren't enough, as I said, so that's why each pumpkin has this octane light inside of them. Of course, all of them have double-sided checked, so it reflects to both sides of the pumpkin. The pumpkin material setup is fairly easy. It's the 4 maps that I got with a pumpkin. That would be roughness, bump, and normal, with orange plugged into the transmission, so that's the universal material, and a scattering medium where I plugged in the diffuse through a color correction, so I get some control over it, and another color into the scattering. So let's hope Octane doesn't crash. Just resend it. Hopefully we are good to go. Yes, we are. And that is basically what it looks like. It's super bland because the HDRI I'm using is pretty bright, so the atmosphere doesn't come across as nicely. So let's take a look at the trees that I placed in the back. Also with some tree lights, which are barely visible right now, but they are in the end product because of the fog that is scattered around the scene. So this is what we look in. We got some trees in the back and some trees in the front. Super, like, not to scale or anything, but in this specific use case, it works. Now, I made sure to replace that door with another door. As you can see right here, I also created a new door frame and added an additional texture. The doorknob is blue, which shouldn't actually be the case, but that's not visible anyways, so it's fine. So this is my scene with our new door. We got some legs sticking out there as someone, I guess, died in his own home. And that person died because, well, she got to him first, I guess. So let's actually pause this, save it, and then re-render, just so we avoid any troubles. Because the scene sure is troublesome. And that is a DAZ character that I created, well, inside DAZ Studio. And as this updates, I guess I will just, I'm not sure what is happening right here. That one GPU is about to die, I believe. So let me pause this and actually re-clear my GPU memory. And just try again and see if that works. See if that gives us a result. Turn this off. Seems to be not working. So, well, let me show you what I did inside DAZ Studio. So this is the character I created inside DAZ in a regular T-pose, and I animated this character like this. You can see some funky head movement at the beginning, but I created that head movement because I wanted that hair that is being simulated to pull back a bit before just pulling all the way down. I wanted this scruffy look at the end, and it came out super nicely. As you can see, that hair keeps falling and is simulating. So that is what I did. I exported that into CINEMA4D, applied all my materials, and I also exported that as an MDD animation without the hair, of course, so I could simulate a t-shirt in Marvelous Designer over it. So I did that. And here we go. Okay, I system restarted because something was wrong, but this is the character that I have created, that I have imported from DAZ with the hair. So if we move in, we can see that our hair is nice and scruffy. Let's hit render view. So we have some nice looking hair. And if we zoom out again, there's nothing really special about it. But the character itself, so the t-shirt is just a regular shirt with a mask that is splitting it to a red and a white shirt material. That red shirt material is 1-for-1 the same material that is base shirt. I just made it red because the blood and the capacity of our scene doesn't need to be super realistic. It just needs to be there, and it just needs to be registered by the viewer. And that's basically it. The skin material has some slight subsurface scattering, not on the face, only on the legs and the arms, because that is the only part of the body that is truly visible. If we head in here, you can see that we got our diffuse map, we got the specular, the normal, and the transmission color. And then we got a scattering medium with the SSS skin material and another RGB spectrum plugged into the absorption. That's basically it for our character setup. So the scene itself looks pretty meh like this because it's so bright. But once we get all the fog and the darkness going, then it's all coming together. As you can see, I have also applied some, or I guess I have also added some flying bats through our scene. So if we move like this, I mean, that's super sloppy. That's not really... Oh, there we go. So for some reason, it's not really playing back that well, even though it was before. But that's okay. I think that's because of the alembic files in the scene. Yeah, you can see we got some bats swirling around, and my setup for this is super easy. So if I were to head into a new scene, and then you can see I have I animated for each bat, I animated just the basic object to be visible in the editor and the renderer to be on and off. So in this case, it's around at the end of my scene, or somewhere in the middle rather. And I've animated the bat from the point where the camera is, and then from the right to the left, or the left to the right side. So that's a alembic of a flying bat put into a spline wrap, and that spline wrap looks like that. So you either plus X or minus X, depending on the direction the rat is flying. And then you animate the offset. So that's what I did. I animated the offset. In this case, it looks weird because it appears here and then it stops here and goes away. But the path that is being flown over is just what the camera is able to see. And I've done that and repeated that for all of the bats in the scene. So you can see these flickering red and green. That means that they're now turned off. And then now another string of bats is flying through the camera, or through the scene, right? Rather than... And that's how I set up my bats in this scene, because I wanted some more motion. At first I wanted to have like trees at the end, at the sides that were forested trees, but they are too heavy. So I opted for dead trees. And that's basically it for the breakdown of the 3D part of the scene. So if we actually remove that bright light that we have using and we enable the fog, I have a fog that is in the door that separates the open door to the outside, and then I have a main fog that is basically engulfing a whole lot of the scene. So you can see right here, that is the green box is the base fog of the entire scene. And the fog details aren't anything special. So that's like a low density and white and gray scattering and absorption, and almost the same for the main fog. It's just a light blue absorption and the white scattering. If I turn off our bright HDR and turn on the two light sources, I have one for the fog and one for her that you have already been seeing all this time, that just shines light on top of her. And if we now render this, you can see that there is certainly some big Oh, that is not what I mean by atmospheric differences. Here we are with the night scene rendering somewhat slowly. which makes sense because it's a dark scene and dark scenes are very heavy on octane. And that is basically it. So the only thing that I would like to tell everyone watching is getting rid of annoying ass volumes that catch light. It never used to work, and there's still some ways where it doesn't apply or it isn't useful, but in this case it is super useful. If you take a look at my main fog volume, under object layer, I made sure to enable the light pass for the light pass ID2, which is both my front light that is lighting the scene from the front and the top light that is a more prevalent light source when looking at this, like when looking at the scene like this. So if I were to just check that, then you can see what suddenly happens right here. And that is because my top light, which is assigned the light pass ID2 right here at the bottom, is inside the volume even though the opacity is at 0. But I do not want that light to affect the volume as it does right now, because there's no direct light source that is emitting that light, but rather it's a stylistic choice to want to light her like this, to make her stand out like this, but I do not want the fog to be affected by this. So under the Octane object tag, I just take the 2. That problem is solved. That problem is now gone, and we are good to go with whatever we want to do. It's a dark scene that takes a lot of time to solve up, so I made sure to not render this on my system, even though there's two 3080s in there, but rather I exported an Orbex file and plugged that into the RNDR, the render service by Otoy, and you pay for that. That's fine. You export the Orbex, upload that, and then it renders for you. It's super fast, and it does cost money, but in my experience, time is money. So I'd rather save some and have my system be able to work on other stuff instead of having to, like, you know, to render this out at an acceptable pace would take at least like 12 hours, I think, minimum, because of the sheer darkness of the scene. So yeah, that's what I did. And let's just jump into the post-processing of this scene in After Effects. We are now inside After Effects after I have rendered that online, cloud-based, and this is basically the final result after everything that I've done in After Effects, which isn't a lot. I just wanted to amplify the atmosphere a bit, and I think I've succeeded in doing so. That's a nice little simple animation, and how we went about doing that is the following. So started off by just importing this. This is our base. That's our denoised base beauty render. There's a few things that bother me, which is the threshold right here around the hair. I don't know what that is, but we will just roll with it instead of resending the whole thing. So I've applied Colorista V or 5, and I've done some slight changes to the colors. There's keyframes right here because I've brought up the highlights as we move further into the scene. But that's basically it. So yeah, we just did a little bit of color tweaking right here to all 3 of them, and then just went with the feeling of adjusting it as I deem fit. And the same with the colors. I've brought up the reds a bit. I've kind of changed the oranges and the yellows. I made sure that the greens pop a bit more. Same goes for the orange brightness or lightness, I guess. And that's basically it for the color correction, because I know I can't get too deep because A, it's all PNG sequences, so that's no ASUS color spectrum, it's all sRGB and PNG. And B, I will also be posting this to social media, which you don't have to go too crazy with the formats that you're working with. And yeah, I will be applying a dehancer at the end, so there will be some color loss and some grain and all that stuff. Then I have applied our post-processing layer that has a flicker on. So it flickers a bit instead of just being the regular post-processing. Put that to screen. And that's basically it. Then I have applied the Frischluft depth of field, which is a nice handy dandy plugin that allows me to apply a bit of depth of field without or with the addition of using my Z depth map that I exported as a pass, which is selected right here as my pass. And I have basically keyframed the radius a bit so it's stronger at the beginning and then kind of decreases towards the end, but not too drastic. And I have applied another post-processing to this, so it's another bloom layer, but instead of just regularly applying this, we crank up the brightness to 100, you can see this is how it looks. So I've made sure to apply some Gaussian blur, even though it's a biased render, biased blur or whatever. It works because it gives us a little bit of extra color density around the pumpkins. And that's all that I want. And for our final effect, we've applied a de-hancer, which is also an amazing plugin that allows you to make sure that your video is being ran through an analog film stock, basically. So I've selected one of those, and for all the other options that you have, I made sure to enable film grain, the halation. So if I were to turn halation off, you can see that right here in the reds. That is what you get. And of course, we have our bloom. So it's a little bit of more, yeah, basically it's another post-processing bloom layer. And yeah, with the film grain and all of that, it all comes together super nicely. I wish I could keep it as clean as this, but I like noise. So what can I do? Noise just fits a lot of the times, even though social media or I guess any other internet platform that you have to upload MP4 files doesn't really like it because it gets compressed, but I have a peace of mind that it's there. That's basically it. So we have all these effects applied. I've also ran this through a upscaler for various other platforms so I can get a 9:16 aspect ratio animation going. And yeah, here we are. That's our animation. I hope that this was some cool insight into this fun little animation. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, this project file and the entire process, including commentary, is available on patreon.com/colifets. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you guys for supporting, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Patreon or Instagram or Twitter, whatever it may be. I'm really thankful, and yeah, have a nice Halloween. Don't get spooked too easily.